everybody, this is Ryan McClanahan with HistoryThroughCards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. So in this video, I'm going to tell you guys about Nat Lofthouse, and obviously I'll show you a better photo than this, a few of them in fact. Nat Lofthouse is a English soccer Hall of Famer. He got in 2002 during the Soccer Hall of Fame's inaugural season. Um, I actually really enjoy collecting vintage soccer and vintage cricket, along with other sports. But one of the reasons why I like doing it so much is because it is really kind of a challenge. And before I get into this Nat Lofthouse article from the Daily Telegraph, I want to kind of go over this with you. The National really was, for me, an interactive classroom. And that's really kind of how I view shows and conventions. And this one was really no different. I saw stuff there that I have never seen before, and a lot of this stuff was your vintage soccer and your cricket cards. As I said before, guys, that you might want to err on the side of caution when collecting this stuff. And one of the reasons why is because uh, it doesn't always translate very well to the hobby, even if both of those sports are two of the world's greatest watched sports. And uh, it may be that they have huge followings, but a lot of times I think what has happened is that there are players that you are not going to recognize, and if you buy and sell these cards, it might be difficult here in the United States. Now, if you're trying to buy these cards, even at the prices that they are now, from England. First off, the pound and the dollar are now kind of leveling out, and that's because Great Britain is going through a recession, and that's gonna hit us at some point if it hasn't already. I'm pretty sure it actually has. Uh, we don't know how badly this recession could end up, and it could end up in a depression, which I hope not. However, I am not a fan of what I'm seeing in the economy right now, and I don't think that anything could get as bad as the Great Depression. But again, I don't have a crystal ball. Uh, I personally am going to be sitting on the sidelines for a while in my collecting pursuits, unless something is fairly cheap and I'm not going to break the bank. And that's one of the reasons why I'm actually collecting a lot of vintage soccer and cricket cards and some golf and tennis and boxing, because this stuff is fairly cheap. Again, a lot of these ball players from across the pond, from Great Britain or France or Germany, are not really that well known. So it can be a little bit tricky to sell these cards, and unfortunately, this is where the education system really I think has kind of failed, especially I guess all over the place and in all fields. Um, I've bumped into collectors who didn't know who Jackie Robinson was, and they were collecting cards, and my first thought was, now, how can you actively collect a card if you don't know who you're collecting, if you don't know who the player is? And at one point in time, our news media, our sporting news media would tell their readers who these ball players were, what their accomplishments were on the field and sometimes off the field. And unfortunately, today, I am seeing less and less of that over the last 20 to 30 years. And I'm following a lot of news articles from the 1890s all the way through today. So I can see pretty steep decline in the education level of our sports writers, and this was never the case before. If you read an article from the 1910s, 1920s, or even 30s, they will tell you guys who these ball players were and why they're important and what you can learn from them. In this case, I am going to tell you guys about an article. It's actually an interview that was done from February 25th, 1995, which was well past Nat Lofthouse's career. Um, and he actually was born in 1925 and he passed away in 2011. Uh, the thing is that I don't know all these ball players, and I'm actually kind of learning with you guys as well. I read just a ton of material on an everyday basis just for my own job, and you should always learn something new every day. And in my case, and I've told you guys this before, but I did not have a very good education, formal education growing up, through no fault of my own. But I figured that um, if you make something interesting and worthwhile, then someone is going to either benefit from it. And that was the case when I had a teacher who took us on a field trip to the sports card store to get us to really kind of learn about math and problem solving skills. And, uh, that was a great idea. And, why not make education fun? Or interesting. And it doesn't all have to be, especially history. It's not all about numbers and places, and that's boring. That really is. Um, but if you have something else, like maybe a sports card or a non-sports card like this, uh, that could kind of pique somebody's interest, and you never know in which direction that might follow somebody. Um, and one of the things that I've noticed, which is not related to this, but a lot of people who are, say, in NASA, they they got there because they watched Star Trek, or like they were into like design or something like that, or art because they watched Star Trek or maybe Star Wars or something like that, and they chose their field only because they did watch this stuff, and so in my case. I went into a really a very kind of bizarre writing profession because of my. It's not a lack of education. It was a lack of understanding on the part of the teachers and my frustrations with that. And again, uh, the day I went to a sports card store and found out about vintage baseball cards, and I transformed that into a writing career for the most part. I'm still learning, which is fun, and I hope you guys can learn a little bit here too. So, with that, guys, let's get to Nat Lofthouse. I think this is gonna be a really interesting article. It's gonna be a little long too, so chill out, and I hope you enjoy. The gent who put keepers back of the net along with the ball. This is an interview with Michael Parkinson with Nat Lofthouse from February 25th, 1995, found in the Daily Telegraph. The day after war broke out in September 1939, Nat Lofthouse joined Bolton Wanderers Football Club. He is still there. He is in his 70th year, but bright-eyed and fit-looking. He looks as solid as an oak. A bit gnarled, maybe, but you don't have to possess a vivid imagination to see how he terrorized defenders and why he gained the title the Lion of Vienna. It's a long way from Bolton to Vienna, as they say, and more of that later. He was the most English of footballers, direct, uncompromising, fearless, hard but fair. Nothing distracted him from his job, which was to fill the net with footballs and, if necessary, goalkeepers. In the 1958 final, Bolton played Manchester United. This was the United recovering after the horror of Munich, borne to the cup final of an engulfing wave of sympathy and emotion. Some teams had found it difficult to play against them, had felt compromised by the public overwhelming desire that nothing but good should happen to what was left of the Busby Babes. Bolton and Lofthouse put paid to that dream by winning 2-0, with Lofthouse settling matters by shoulder charging Harry Gregg into the net. So much for sentiment. There was much debate about its legality. It certainly wasn't pretty, but by God, it was effective. That expert judge of footballers, particularly if they were born and bred in Lancaster, D.H. Davies, wrote of him: "Some like to get their effects by stealth, others by rank piracy. Nat is in the latter class, and when he opens out all his guns he is a sight to see." It was on May 25th, 1952, playing for England against Australia in Vienna, that Lofthouse demonstrated all the virtues Davies perceived of him. To win a famous victory in such a manner, from the moment to this, whenever you mention Nat Lofthouse, people say the Lion of Vienna. What made the game so special was its billing as the championship of Europe. We were a year or more away from meeting the Hungarians at Wembley and having our world turned upside down. In 1952 we were still a great soccer nation. Finley and Matthews were two of football's acknowledged stars. The game was given another dimension by the presence of several thousand soldiers who were garrisoned in Australia. Lofthouse won the match several minutes from the end when we took a through ball from Tom Finley, ran half the length of the field with the Australians in pursuit, and struck the ball home before colliding with the onrushing Australian goalkeeper and knocking himself out. The moment moved, the Times reported. For anybody who has ever seen or read football, Lofthouse will always be known as the Lion of Vienna. It was his example, although the match had brought the scores of British soldiers pouring through the crowd at the end of the game to cheer him lion-hearted from the field. We don't call people lion-hearted anymore. Nowadays, we say they've got bottle. We don't have center forwards anymore. We call them strikers. It's not just the game that has changed, so is our way of thinking about it, of describing it. What would the frenzy of today make the poem written by the fan to commemorate Nat's retirement from Bolton Wanderers? Lofty the Lion of Vienna has retired from the football field. It took a medical specialist to make Lofthouse finally yield. All the best center halves in the country tried their hand at stopping our Nat. Nearly all had to give up the struggle. You can blame Mother Nature for that. Like a Centurion tank was our Nathan. Why, a turn of speed like a bomb, many a goalie said sadly. I wonder where that came from. Nat Lofthouse had laughed when I read that to him in his office at Burden Park. He had forgotten it, but he liked the humidor, typically Bolton, he said. The same could be said about him. He works from an office at the club helping out the sponsors' details, linking the club with the community. As soon as he gave up playing, he came back to the club for a job. They made him second team trainer. His first task was to clean the toilets. He had scored 255 goals for Bolton, been capped 33 times by England, and scored 30 goals, and he was here working as a lavatory attendant at his old club. It redefines loyalty. He doesn't make much of it. There wasn't anything else to do, so I had to muck in, he said. Sometimes people say that he has a cushy job nowadays, and he has to smile. When he joined Bolton, he was given 2 white 5s as a signing on fee. When he took them home, his father, a coal bagger with the corporation, thought he had robbed a bank. The money represented a month's wages to his dad. During the war years, he worked down in the pit. It made him strong. I was lean and hard as nails, not an ounce of fat on me, he said. He played his first game for England against Yugoslavia in 1950 and scored twice. He felt pretty chuffed with himself. Head like a bucket, he said. He returned home and Bolton lost to Chelsea 3-1. Nat still thought he was the bee's knees. As he came off the field, George Taylor, the trainer, said, "See me 8:30 Monday morning." Nat said, "It's our day off, isn't it?" And Taylor said, "It is for the rest of the team, but not for thee." Nat recalled, "When I turned up, he gave me the biggest dressing down I had ever had, told me not to be big-headed, and then said something I never forgot. He said, "You can do three things. You can run, shoot, and head. You couldn't trap a bag of washing, so don't get fancy." When you play for England, you've got Matthews and Finney working for you. Here at Bolton, you've got Bobby Langton and Doug Holden. So all I want you to do in the future is run, shoot, and head. That was all I did really. I was fit and fast. Matthews and Finney used to put it on my forehead. Then there were players like Mannion and Carter. Finney was my favorite. I played with him 20 odd times, and on 18 occasions, his was the pass I got scored from. He and George Best were the two most complete players I ever saw, he said. He showed me the boardroom with his England caps in the display cabinet and then led me down the tunnel onto the pitch. When he played for the Bolton Wanderers with the likes of Hartle and Banks, this was the walk that would test the nerve of the bravest opposition player. "Hey, they didn't like playing here," said Nat Lofthouse, looking across the pitch. I inspected the track around the ground where Tommy Banks would dump his victims. "Give 'em a bit of gravel rash on the arse, let 'em know who's the boss," said Tommy. It is reputed that his partner, Roy Hartle, would call out, "When that's finished kicking thy man, Tommy, chip in over there so I can have a go at him." Lofthouse says, "I used to wear my shin pads on the backs of my calves with Tommy and Roy behind me. Mind you, we were all tough and there was a wonderful team spirit. If you kicked one of our team, you had to kick the other 10, but I would have hated to have played against Banks and Hartle. I tell people that if Roy Hartle's mother had pulled a number 11 shirt on and run out at Burden Park with the opposition, he would have kicked her to death." He played his last game at Burden Park in 1960. He played right inside and nursemaid to a 16-year-old boy making his debut called Francis Lee. Lee crossed. Lofthouse scored with a header. Lee embarked on a glittering career. Lofthouse started a new life cleaning toilets and polishing boots for players who weren't fit to lace his, but he wouldn't change too much of it. He thinks being center forward is much harder work nowadays. Defensive tactics and patterns of play make it much more difficult to score goals. They should have to do much more than run, shoot, and head nowadays, he said. Mind you, I'd very much like a modern team to go out just one more time and play with two backs, three halfbacks, and five forwards. It would be very interesting to see how the other teams copped. I ventured how this was how Tottenham had played under Ardiles, and looked what happened. "Yes, but they didn't have Banks and Hurdle in defense," he said. Nat Lofthouse and Bolton Wanderers have been together now for 55 years, a remarkable test of enduring fidelity at any level. But in soccer, where players and clubs often show little regard for loyalty, the fact is, as well as representing Bolton's past, Nat Lofthouse also stands for the future. There is much the players of today could learn from talking to him, and nothing but good to be gained from such a decent and friendly man representing the club. As I left, my taxi driver said, "Who you been talking to?" "Nat Lofthouse." I said, I bet myself he would say, "The Lion of Vienna." Instead, he said, "A gentleman. Still takes the same cap size he did when he was a lad. I can't improve on that." So I hope you found this as interesting as I did. I didn't know a whole lot about Nat Lofthouse, and now I kind of have a better feeling of who he was. Again, like I said, I really enjoy collecting this stuff that is kind of a departure from your average baseball, basketball, hockey, or whatever, golf, tennis, even. Um, Soccer and cricket, again, are not expensive for the most part, and they are a great challenge, which is what I'm always trying to do is challenge myself, whether it's in my own profession or if it's in my hobby. I always want to challenge trying to find these cards. And so if I come across anything really interesting, I want to share it with you. And in turn, I really enjoy hearing what you guys have to say, and a great dialogue. Hopefully, back and forth is what I really enjoy apart from uh, collecting sports cards. And so, with that, guys, thank you very much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it, as always. And until the next time, I will talk to you later. Bye. Like a bomb, many a goalie said, fuck. He felt pretty chuffed. What the fuck is that? Try this once again. This sucks. Do they speak English over in Britain? Sometimes I wonder about this. You feel pretty cuffed. I don't understand this friggin' language. I swear to God, man. It would be very interesting to see how the other teams copped. Is that English? The fuck? Let's try this again. Mind you, I'd be very fuck. Mind you, I'd very much like to see a modern team go out just one more time and play with two. They say this is English. I have no fucking clue. It doesn't read like it is. Let's try this again.